and we're ready to rock and roll. Everybody getting ready for...
Channeling my inner Steve Lesher.
Never mind, I might not have used the right terms. But anyway, we're looking forward to Thanksgiving, so hopefully we'll be over before then.
We're starting an hour early, so yeah, good.
And we're starting an hour early, so it's a nice way to start a holiday meeting, though. Anyway, could we all stand for a Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comments. At this time, members of the public are invited to address the authority regarding any item that is not listed on the agenda. Please complete one of the speaker cards in advance of the meeting and hand it to a member of their staff. Is there anyone wishing to address us this evening? Seeing no one step through the podium, we shall move into item D, presentation. Acknowledgement of Don Tatson's facilitation role in the development of the 2020 Transportation Expenditure Plan. And what I thought I would do as the chair, there's really been people that have known Don much longer than I have and have worked with him. So I'm going to turn this over to the vice chair, and she's going to tell us all about, she's worked with you so many years, and Newell, and anyway, the chair's turning this presentation over, and I think it's quite appropriate.
Don, you have been a stellar member of this authority, and now a, quote, consultant to the authority. You know, we could not have asked for anyone better to get us through the expenditure plan creation process. Your expertise, your calm, your strategic planning, I cannot go on long enough. And since Bob just delegated this to me, I hadn't even thought it through, except that you are really missed as a regular sitting member of this body. So to be able to have you back for this process was really wonderful. It took a huge load off of everyone else because you were thinking way ahead of the rest of us, as you always did. And we really, really, really appreciate that. And we have a presentation that Bob's going to give you, but I would suggest we go around the table because everyone has a different appreciation for all of your talents.
Monica. Well, if we're starting from to my right, you are.
Okay. Well, Don, I probably have known you the shortest amount of time of everybody on this board, but I'm really appreciative and thankful of how helpful you were when I became your alternate, and you reached out to me and really, were very helpful in my transition into coming onto this board. So I really appreciate that and all the work that you've done, and I really appreciated going through the process of the TEP with you. So thank you very much for your service.
And Don, I don't know
How long I've known you, I can't remember, but it's been a while.
Right.
And what I think I appreciate about you more than anything is that you're always there and you always have a really good comment on whatever the topic is, including offline. And I think I found that really helpful. And I think everyone here has found that kind of help really helpful. And it's going to be really hard not having it here. But every time I go through Lafayette on BART, I think about it. So thank you.
Yeah, I too, long time, and I'm probably most impressed with how quickly you grasp the correct answer when there's a lot of muddling up to try and pull it out of there. And I'm thinking, while I was here, I said, what could I get something special for Don? So I think Tomorrow night, I'm going to take a little trip, and I'm going to pick up a real special something from a project you did overseas. Randy may even have a couple chips left from his trip, but I thought that'd be kind of neat to bring. You haven't been back there, have you, in a long time?
It's been probably over 10 years.
Yeah.
Where are we talking?
Don Tatson was the project manager at the Star Casino in Sydney, Australia, to which I'm still trying to get some of their money, but I talk big, but I donate. And I'm going to buy something before I spend it at the tables. But I really appreciate the years on SWAT and leadership, and the word just really came out in doing this. And I hate to say it, we're probably going to need you some more in the stretch and convincing some of my council members this is something worth really going out on a limb and pushing.
Well, I'm going to take an alternate view. I'm hoping we get to utilize the breadth of your experience and knowledge. I, too, have been very impressed by your calmness, because some of you may think I'm not always the calmest person, and I recognize that, but I also appreciate it in those who are. You know, I also want to mention, I know Teresa sits here from the Lafayette Council, but you're one of the longest-serving elected officials in this county. And that speaks not only to the residents and voters of Lafayette, but you've held other leadership positions around here. So, but in addition to all those wonderful things, you like dogs, so that is close to my heart, and you talk about them with such love and fondness, and of course your wife and your travels, and you're very eclectic, and I say that with a very positive thing. I don't know, the term Renaissance man is used too much, but you have so many varied interests and are very knowledgeable. So it's really a joy to get to sit and listen to you. I think you should be a professor.
You've created a legend in the transportation arena, not only within Contra Costa, but regionally. Following you on the board for the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority, it's kind of intimidating. They look to me for certain answers, and although, you know, obviously I think a whole lot of myself, but we address things from different perspectives already, with different backgrounds and different knowledge bases and whatnot. But you've always been great to work with and willing to share what's ever on your mind, which has been helpful, and we really appreciate all the work you've done.
Well, you know, when you left office, we were kind of expecting that we wouldn't see you anymore for a while, but just around the corner, there you were, and in a place that you were really needed. And I was trying to find a transportation term to describe it, and I think that in this last effort, you were kind of like the engine oil, you know, that kept all these cylinders firing as we got there. And, you know, it may be time for an oil change. You know, you might want to take a day off. But thank you for all your hard work.
Don, thank you for your leadership. Not only in this agency, but I've served with you on other agencies, and your leadership style is something that many of us desire to have. Your ability to be very much, how do I want to say it, that you have that capacity to bring folks together and to be able to, your collaborative nature in trying to get difficult things across to people who are also very difficult to receive information, and you have a way of doing that. And so that style that you've shown here with the authority, I see it in other areas of your work. So I really want to just thank you for that and for what the impression that you have set upon me. And we've worked together for a long time, but I've always looked at you for your leadership and guidance in many areas. So thank you.
As the chair, I reserve my spot to the very last.
Don, it's been a long time. I guess nobody has served as long as you. You started back in 1985, You served 33 years on the council. I'm just hitting 25, and we're the same age, and it's like, wow, I'm still the kid. But when all the years I've known you, met you, worked with you, you were one of the first here back in 1988 when Measure C passed. You were on the board almost right after that. I think you came on officially 89, and you've been here touching this agency since the beginning. But it always comes to mind that it's integrity, knowledge, wisdom, ethics, fairness, honesty, and the adjectives just go on. And I think that's what I always admire you for. And I think what makes you a great leader is that you are consistent about that. And I always tell people want to get in politics, if you want to start out here in ethics and not end up there, you're going to have to fight. You're going to have to fight really hard. And you've always done that. Your ethics, your value, and who you are has never changed. And that is extraordinary. And as Federal said, you are a role model, and you really are, because you've acted it, you've talked it, you've done everything you're supposed to do. And the legacy you give all of us, and I think to this agency, is those are the high standards that every day we get up, we need to remember, why are we doing this? Who are we trying to help? What problem are we trying to solve? And just from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
In honor of Chair Bob, I'm going to compare you to an ear of corn. And it's going to be the first time I met you, you were all wrapped up and very straight-laced, and I thought, oh, good gravy. And then there'd be like little silk coming out every so often, an incredible example of good. And I watched you chair the last measure, and it was bizarre. And you just managed to find a kernel in everything, get it, kernel? In everything that somebody said. And then the more I got to know you, the more I thought you are sweet with butter and so really tasty and well worth looking forward to get to know better. So enjoy.
Pass. So I was going through all of these things and saying, yeah, it's just about transportation, because I have had, as Supervisor Mitchoff, Authority Board Member Mitchoff, pointed out, I am on the Lafayette City Council and honored to follow in Don's footsteps there. And when I first was appointed to this body, I thought, oh, but I'm not going to get to work with Don on the City Council or on the Transportation Authority. But here you came back with the consulting on the TEP, just for me. And I very much appreciate that. But I have had the opportunity to work with Don for a long time, and I was thinking through all the things that weren't transportation related. And actually, in one of my early times meeting Don in a working situation was on the La Miranda Bus Transportation Authority. And when I was on the school board, and Don was in one of his many years of being on the Lafayette City Council. And so I've worked with Don from there through being colleagues working together on city schools partnerships, the library, a number of different things. And the great news is that even if we can't find another project for him to consult on beyond March, because I know you'll still be very involved with us through then, that I know and am very honored and excited that I know your phone number. I know where you hang out from 5:30 in the morning until 6 or so, and so can come and tap your wisdom and infinite knowledge about everything. And so thank you very much for your service here, and then also for all of your service to Lafayette and for your friendship.
So, wow, I feel like a rookie politician here because all of the things that have been said, I concur with. I don't have a lot to add to that other than, Don, thank you for being a friend and encouraging and supporting me at times when I needed that, and probably still do. But thank you, and wow.
Randy,
I'm not an
you better
official.
fill a book.
So from a staff perspective, and on behalf of our staff, we really appreciate your mentorship. You're a person that I know you saved Terry Ann from making a horrible mistake, and I appreciate that because you know when I couldn't talk her, and she wasn't really believing me, I told her to call Don, right? And tell Ellen we appreciate her help on several sticky situations we had earlier, and so we enlist you not only on the easy items, but most importantly on those very, very difficult situations, and you really provide great and very sage advice, and so we really appreciate that. And I'm going to tell you a funny story real quick because I love telling stories about him because I was asked to be the one of the speakers at his roasting in Lafayette. And I really didn't do it justice. I could have gone further into depth, but I didn't. But I have one, and this is the consolidation of 511. So the transplant, transpaxes come on, bring it together. We want it centralized. We want you to do it, you to oversee it, CCTA staff. And we said, okay, let's do it. Don's over there making like 700 comments on it. After the meeting, I pulled him aside. I said, why are you making comments on something that doesn't affect you? You chose not to consolidate in this process. He goes, if you put something in front of me, I'm going to make a comment on it. So thank you all for always commenting and keeping us in line. We appreciate it.
Then I'd like to say this, and then we'll come up and present something to you. I was told that as a very young man, as I got more involved in just life itself, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. So I'm surrounded by a wonderful group of people in my city, etc., but you were a part of that goodness. And so thank you for giving me all the credit for all the nice things I've done. But I'd just like to, right, but I would like to say, Don, you're quite an inspiration. You're methodical. It's the quiet people you have to worry about, and or listen to. And so consequently, it's been a pleasure and an honor to be around you and be with you, and I've enjoyed it and I've learned, which is the key note of everything. With that being said,
Let's go.
Don, that was called the hook.
Yeah, I think that was called the hook.
He sees it. I'm just going to say, Don has the standard plaque that the chairs get with all the pins on it. I have a feeling he's going to value this one even more.
Oh.
It is covered with comments from all of us. Hold it up. Come on, Bob.
I got it.
Oh, let's stand on the other side.
Stand over here.
And then you can come back and talk.
Oh, let me take a picture of the crowd first. So, like, face this way. No. Right here. This is perfect. Right here.
Come here, Bob.
Right here. Oh, yeah, that's it. Right in front of the maps. It shows you all the jobs there right there. Look this way. Smile. Okay, thanks.
Terry Ann's got to get her for the record.
He needs a rousing.
Thank you. Well, thank you very, very much. And now I think it's time for just a brief bit of rebuttal. I am, when I appeared before you about 7 months ago to talk about whether I could play a role in this, I said that I was both honored and humbled by the thought that you might entrust me to play some role. I still am. And the recognition tonight just deepens those feelings. So for me, playing even a small role in creation of this expenditure plan helped me move into what I'm calling retirement 2.0. And I used that term when I was at my high school reunion last week. So I want to say I particularly enjoyed working with the authority members, the members of all the advocacy groups that came to us, members of staff. Each group, from a logic perspective, was what's called necessary but not sufficient. But what was great is everyone recognized that there was a greater good that you could achieve collectively, and you made compromises. You reached out in new directions to do things like propose a vehicle mile travel bank. And the concepts coalesced. And that was just a wonderful example of it's easy to play a role with a group that wants to be successful. And so I think my job was actually probably the easiest here. And I also found some great new colleagues among staff, and I want to just highlight Tim. He and I got to know each other very well. I had been on the authority a little bit when he joined and had better knowledge of his predecessor, but I've come to know Tim very well, and I will say Randy made a great decision. So, well, so I would also say that I've had a long private and public career, and I've had an opportunity to work with many, many organizations and companies. And I've always viewed the Transportation Authority as among the best that I've worked with because of the talent that comes together monthly from both sides of the dais, and because there's a commitment to make this a successful and influential organization that benefits all of Contra Costa County. And I look forward to your shared success, and if you wish to call on me again, I think at least Teresa knows my number. And Mala said that I can speak tonight as a private citizen as opposed to sort of a quasi-staff member. So get that measure passed. Let's do it. Thank you.
No, Don. You get the measure passed.
All right, approval of minutes, 1-0.
Move approval.
Second.
Move. I have a first. I don't know which one was the second. Simultaneously. Got it? Terry-Ann? Okay, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Moving on to consent calendar.
So moved.
I have a first. I have a second.
Luella got it.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Moving into regular agenda items. Item 4A, Administration and PC. 4A8, Volunteer Canyon Road, Iron Horse Trail, Bicycle Pedestrian Overcrossing Project.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Ivan Ramirez, and I am the Director of Construction for the Authority. And there's 3 items. They're all action items regarding the Iron Horse Trail. And before I go into the specific action request that we have for you, I'm going to give you a brief presentation about the project and also the project delivery method that we are asking you to approve, which is the construction manager general contractor delivery method. So first, a little bit about the project. The city of San Ramon wants to have an iconic bridge, almost like welcoming people into their city. This is located near the new city hall, and there's a number of developments going around the area, and this bridge will be of importance to the city, again, to seem like a welcoming to the visitors. The project cost overall is $21 million. The construction itself is about $15 million. The city of San Ramon is actually the sponsor of the project. A while back, our executive director, Randy Wasaki, got together with the city manager, and the city manager kind of asked Randy if we could help them, the authority could help them deliver the project. And from then, both agency staff got to work. And it was, I believe, in September that this board approved the cooperative agreement with the city of San Ramon. We are going to be the implementing agency, and again, the delivery method is construction manager, general contractor, or CMGC for short. So a little bit about cable stay bridges. They're becoming more and more common in the United States, but for a long time they weren't. But interestingly enough, they've been around for a long, long time. This picture here, they placed the Brooklyn Bridge, which at least I know it as a suspension bridge, but it actually has some cable stay components as part of its construction. And generally, they're aesthetically pleasing and they're easier to design and construct. So this is a graphic that demonstrates how the CMGC process works. There's the owner, of course, CCTA, and we hire 3 independent entities to help deliver this project. We begin by hiring the design consultant and the independent cost estimator, and I will talk a little bit about the ICE in a little bit. But once the design consultant is on board, they begin the design process, and that can start very early during the environmental phase, and hopefully you'll get them in before the 60%, because if you get past the 60%, then maybe the value of the CMGC delivery method is not quite there because it has advanced too much. But the idea is that the design consultant consults with a contractor, a general contractor, in helping deliver and finesse the design. So there's a lot of interaction going back and forth between the design consultant and the general contractor, help them with schedule, help them with means and methods, convenience to the public, schedule shrinkage, and so on. And by doing so, the project gains by making the project more efficient and costing less and saving time. During that entire process, the independent cost estimator validates the construction manager's estimate. Once certain milestones are reached, the construction manager provides an estimate. The independent cost estimator, again working for the owner, validates whether it's good or not, and there might be some reconciliation that happens. The idea is that as the design moves forward, there is agreement with the price, so that when the design is completed, the construction manager becomes the general contractor and they deliver the project. Should no agreement be reached, then the authority at its option can put it out to bid to any bidder, and the general contractor that helped deliver the design can no longer bid because they will obviously have an advantage. So at the top is a graph that shows the typical design bid bill that the authority delivers on normal projects. And to give you an idea of the CMGC process, because the design is not completed prior to the construction beginning, there is significant time savings that can occur. So again, to reiterate some of the CMGC benefits, there is increased quality control because the contractor is engaged. They might catch things that will be missed during a typical design process. There's more reliable cost management because as we move along, we evaluate the costs, and we can make decisions whether we should decrease or remove certain features that the project might have to deliver the project within the allotted cost. There's innovation and collaboration, like I stated earlier. There is reduced risk, and also, like I stated earlier, there is improvement on the schedule. So we're asking staff if you have any questions before I proceed to the action items. I'm happy to answer.
Okay, before you're going to go on to the next item. Is that what you're doing?
Well, I'm going to read the action items. So you provide approval.
Well, I do. Before we go there, I do have a speaker.
Public comment.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay. Mr. Bruce Olson.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Bob, and congratulations to Don Tatson. I am Bruce Olson, Pittsburgh's Mr. Bicycle, and I rode my bicycle to this meeting tonight. I'd like to say that good things come in threes. 3 large projects that help integrate bicycles into the transportation infrastructure of the Bay Area are moving forward. All are bridges. Last Thursday night, the Highway 4 Bypass Authority voted to condemn land for a bridge for the McCollum Aqueduct Trail to cross over Highway 4. This body had a lot to do with getting Highway 4 built through Oakley and Brentwood, and that's a good thing. Then last Saturday was the opening of the bike path over the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge. That project was a long time in coming also. I saw Mayor Butt there, and I saw Amy Worth there, and they were both riding bicycles. If anyone else here was there and I didn't see you, I apologize, but they were setting a good example. And tonight, this body is authorizing the next step in the construction of the Iron Horse Trail Bridge over Bollinger Canyon Road. Good things come in threes. We were not lucky. These 3 bridge projects are part of hard work and effort on the part of staff and elected officials. But if you'll allow me a second to talk about luck, Francis Lowe here, seated behind me, works for the Contra Costa Transportation Authority as an engineer, as a consultant, and he is lucky. You'll remember 3 weeks ago in Lafayette, we had 2 fires, one on each side of the freeway. PG&E got blamed. If I can pause for a moment, say, be glad you guys aren't PG&E. One of the fires was in his front yard, and he was out there fighting it with his garden hose, and he saved his house. And when I heard the story about him, I said, Francis, did you go out and buy a lottery ticket? And he said, no, we were evacuated. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other speaker cards. Okay, Mr. Ivan.
Move the item.
Second.
Well, are you?
There's 3 items?
Oh, you want to do them all at
Yeah,
once?
3 items. Do you want?
No, I know there's 3 separate, but sometimes my county council tells us we have to do them one at a
One at a
time.
time.
If we can do them all at once, that's fine.
I'm okay doing them all at once as long as there was no one else who wanted to speak on the other 2 items in terms of public comment.
We'll do all 3 at one time, and you party call the business. Go ahead.
So the first one is approval of resolution 1958P, which will authorize staff to deliver this project using the CMGC project delivery method. Second one is the authorization to issue RFP 19-7 to provide design and engineering services for the Bollinger Canyon Road Iron Horse Trail bicycle and pedestrian overcrossing project. And the third one is authorization to issue RFP 19-8 to provide independent cost estimating for the Bollinger Canyon Road Iron Horse Trail bicycle and pedestrian overcrossing project.
I already have a first.
Second.
And I have a second.
If I can add a comment that since Bruce brought up 3, this actually is one of 3 bridges that we, Danville and San Ramon, have been working on for over a decade. Sycamore, Crow Canyon, and Bollinger. So it'll be very interesting to see where we go from here.
Okay. And again, I'll ask, is anyone from the public wishing to address the board on any of those items? All right. Oh,
I just want to add that, APC, well, we're not discussing this because Ivan and the team has done a great job. At APC, we spent a lot of time on this. And that for the public, this is a project that is, our agency is whole on this. If there's cost overruns, we're doing this project for and on behalf of the city of San Ramon. So I think that's a great demonstration of how to do that. This particular partnership, both Tom Butt and I, being in construction, really had some questions about how you do this. This is unusual, but I think we all look forward, and if Ivan's on this project, I know it's going to come out good.
So,
Thank you.
Randy.
Please don't forget Assemblymember Bauer Cahan. The legislation, she was, I think, a freshman, and we came to her with this. It's approved by Federal Highway Administration, United States Department of Transportation, but it's new for our area, and it's for all local agencies like us all over California, off the state highway system. So it's a big deal, and hopefully when we're done, you'll go. We need to do more of these kinds of projects when they're that complex.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you to the Assembly member.
I have a first and I have a second. We'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 4.1, new item, accept cybersecurity report, vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. And this is information.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Brian Kelleher. I'm the CFO for the Authority. I brought this forward because I thought it was a good news story. It's something that's very exciting. It's something that's very scary for a lot of organizations that haven't done something like this. So how we got here, early in the audit year, we have what's called the SAS 99 meetings. Our auditors, MGO, come out and they talk about fraud, they talk about other items, and they try and give you a little bit of heads up. So they sat in with Randy and they were talking about this idea with Randy, and Randy comes into my office and says, "Hey, Brian, I want you to look into this." So I looked into it. I called MGO Technologies. I talked to Carl Kispert with MGO Technology. They're a separate group of MGO. And we talked about the different items. And something for our organization, something we should always be doing is looking to protect our assets, our infrastructure, and different things so that we don't end up in the newspaper. We don't end up like some of the other organizations out there that were very unfortunate. So during our conversations, we set out a plan. He let me know what they would be doing. We worked with them. We have an outside IT consultant firm. Since we're so small, we can't do it ourselves. We don't have the expertise, even though we try. And without their knowing, we went ahead and we did a self-test. With the self-test involves trying to see if they can break into our firewall, break into our email server, break into our data files, take them, hold ransom for them. So they went through that, and then there's a penetration test. We do a lot of our work through a VPN network, so you can log in from outside of the network. You can log in and see your files and different things like that. So I'm not going to tell you everything that was in that report because we don't want to hand over the keys to the car if there's anybody that's listening. There was nothing, in my opinion, that was very drastic, but it was very good for the Authority to do this piece. The outcome of this self-test is we have a number of different items to bring us up to speed and talk about technology and moving into the future. And one of the items is Microsoft Windows 7 Microsoft is going to end support on January 14th of 2020. So a lot of you at your cities are already knowing that, hey, what are we going to do and how are we going to approach this? So as staff, we're going to migrate everybody over to Windows 10. There's about 4 or 5 computers that are still on Microsoft Windows 7. 4 are being replaced tomorrow. And then we're also going to start beginning, as part of this Microsoft ending support, we're going to take our server and we're going to try and move things into the cloud. And moving things into the cloud seems like a scary process, but as we keep hearing on the news, and I was watching the news last night again, is PG&E may shut off power, and PG, may happen in Walnut Creek. And what this will do is it'll add some flexibility to staff members, and they'll be able to access all of our files outside. We'll also have extra backup should there ever be any kind of security threat or disaster that happens here. And we're also going to work on a number of other items on the security front to bring us forward and continue to make sure that we're secure. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carl. Carl's going to do a presentation on cybersecurity. You have seen some at your city, maybe not. I hope Carl gives you something professionally and personally that will help you. And thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to do this with you.
You never said I had to be professional, so I don't know where we're going with this. Good evening, everyone. And thank you for allowing me to speak for 3 hours on the topic of cyber and information security. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you. I applaud Brian and the entire organization at CCTA for being proactive in this environment that we have today around cybersecurity. I'm sure everyone here and behind me has heard of ransomware, and how cities and townships and authorities and states and hospitals and all businesses are being taken hostage, if you will, for their data and their information, and being asked to pay a ransom because they have vulnerabilities. I just really want to spend a few minutes and just raise your level of awareness when we talk about cyber and information security. Remember, when we talk about information and protecting the information that you work with daily or customers, we want to think about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. That's what's called the security triad. We want to keep information confidential. We want to make sure the data has the integrity that it should. I have a whole host of stories that I can share. Unfortunately, we don't have the time. And available, as Brian was saying, having your data available 24/7 is paramount. It's very difficult to operate without that data. You might be able to get by a day or two, but a week, 2 weeks might be too much, and you want to ensure the availability of the data is there. So when we talk about security, that's what we're always keeping in mind. I just want to, again, this is an awareness briefing. I want to bring you up to date on how breaches occur. By raise of hand, does anyone not know what a phishing email is? We probably have received phishing emails. Have you sent a phishing email? Because I just have this vibe that goes right to you. And I'm from New York, so I have no idea. So a phishing email, that's one of the most common attack vectors today, is a phishing email. They look good. They sound good. They're sophisticated. They're targeted. We have to be careful on what we're opening. My cell phones or my mobile phone's over there. 54% of all emails that are phishing emails, a malware attack is launched from a cell phone. 54% of those. Why? Think about how you use your mobile phone today, your cell phone, to read email. You could be waiting for a bus. You could be waiting for a train. You could be waiting for a plane. You could be in a grocery line and you're doing that thing with the thumbs so fast you might be launching a malware attack because you hit a link that doesn't make sense or an attachment. So we want to be very careful about phishing. Missing laptops. People are stealing laptops not for the information, but to fence them to get money that they can use for whatever purpose they want. $20, $30, $40, $50 for a laptop. It's the people who come in to buy those laptops that are looking for the information. And if it's not encrypted properly, that's another way a security breach can happen. Allowing others to access your information, not by raise of hands, but perhaps you have others in your organization that you share your password with, you go on vacation, you share access to certain applications, and they inadvertently do something that they shouldn't do. Send an email on your behalf that should never have gone out. Sent a proposal or a financial document that should never have gone out because they have access to what you're doing. Weak passwords. I believe I'm going to table this for a minute because I have an interesting slide on weak passwords, and we'll have a show of hands at that point. Vendor access. Third-party vendor risk. It's the vendors that you rely on. They rely on MGO as an accounting firm, as a technology firm. We're a vendor to them. We have to be entrusted to protect the information. Just like the vendors that you're using, some of the vendors here. If you're sharing information with them, they have to protect that information. Just a real quick story that a lot of people remember. In 2013, do you remember when that Superstore Target was breached? Right? We may have had a Target card at the time. A small heating and ventilation and air conditioning company called Fazio Mechanical in Pittsburgh, PA, was a third-party vendor to Target. They were sharing invoices with them. That's the only reason they were on their network. A hacker came into Fazio, a small company, and found a vulnerability. They got into their network. Then they said, what do I see here? It's a gateway that says Target. They followed the gateway and in 6 weeks downloaded 43 million credit cards. And you know what it costs Target to recover? millions, billions, trillions, this woman, $292 million is what it costs Target. They had a $100 million cyber insurance policy. They still paid out $192 million. So we have to, that's an extreme case of vendor access, but you really have to think about that. Ransomware, again, this is something that's very common. It's happened to different townships, or excuse me, different towns here in California. The biggest one was not in California, but in Atlanta, Georgia. If you remember last year, the city of Atlanta was held for ransom. They asked for $51,000. They said no. It has cost the city of Atlanta almost $19 million to recover so far, and they're still recovering. Ransomware is detrimental to townships, cities, local government across the country because they just don't have they can't afford the defenses to put into their networks, and the hackers know it, and they're looking for the weakest link, and oftentimes it's within a state or local government entity. Misconfigured networks. This is another way of how a breach happens. Go back to your organization, and next time you use your wireless, think about, is that configured properly on your network? I can't tell you how many times the teams that we work with, the hackers who go out to organizations and look at companies, organizations, wireless deployment, and they're completely misconfigured. We can be in the parking lot getting access to everything. That's another way breaches happen. Now here's that exciting document. 5 million passwords that were breached on the internet last year were collected. These are the top 25. So by raise of hands, how many people are using the word password today? Nobody wants to raise their hand. You know, two weeks ago, I presented to an organization, and 2 people actually raised their hand. I don't know if their bosses were nearby, but they certainly, let me just tell you, the word password, if you use that in all lowercase, if I'm a hacker and I grab your password file, it will take, and I have a tool to crack the password, it will take me 0.20 milliseconds to break that password. Now, change the P to a capital P, change the O to a 0, and put one symbol, it will now take 3.5 weeks to break that password. It's very easy. There's common sense. The policies that you have in your organizations should mandate alphanumeric passwords. But this is just an example. It really happens. I won't say anything. Where is it? No, Donald is in there, number 23. Again, well, I cannot comment on that. Pardon, what was 7? Oh, you real what?
No, I was getting a spot from Mark, and it just wasn't going through.
Oh.
So she used it temporarily.
Okay. Whew.
Get rid of that one quick.
Yeah, real quick. These are just, again, all I want to do is raise your level of awareness tonight. Ransomware attacks, the city of Lodi, April 2019. An email was attached to attachment into an email. They were able to get control of their network. They wanted 75 Bitcoin, which at the time was $400,000. The city said no, and they were successfully able to recover because they had backups that were reliable and that were daily backups. So there's good and bad to this story. The good is they were able to recover. The bad is the hacker got in somehow. That's why Brian and CCTA wanted to do this self-assessment and say, where are the vulnerabilities that I have? And it's not 100% sure, but we're going to take measures to reduce the probability of a hacker getting into our organizations. The city of Banning, I guess April was a good year or a good month. All computers were inaccessible. Department manually rebuilt computers. They did not receive any ransomware demands, but they were held for ransom. Again, the good is they were able to recover. The bad is they had a vulnerability. San Bernardino City Unified School District in October, just last month. Affected internal networks, however, everything was up on a third-party site going to the cloud. Again, good and bad. The good is it was up on the cloud in a secure environment. The bad was they got into the network. That's a common theme. There are too many vulnerabilities in the existing networks. 92.4% of malware is delivered by email. I know this is not the most joyous conversation, but I hope you take some of these points home with you because this is not just for work. This can also be at home. 4 out of 5 small to mid-sized business, and that includes state and local government, report malware evades their antivirus. Why? Because the antivirus they have is you don't spend enough money to get the proper antivirus. 3 out of 4 small to mid-sized organizations say they don't have sufficient IT personnel. And I always say, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters. There are organizations, IT vendors that can help you with this. So I'm just real quick, what are some of the security tips that you should be doing in your organizations? Security awareness. I would be glad to come out to your organization, as I did to CCTA a month or 2 months ago, and presented this type of awareness briefing to their entire organization. Back up your data daily. You have to make sure your organization is backing up daily. Patching software immediately. When we get the things on our phones, if you have an iPhone, you have to upgrade your operating system. If you have Microsoft, you know it says we're going to reboot in 10 minutes or tell me when. There's reasons why that happens, and that is because they're updating the security protection for your device. Limit the number of people who can install software. Just because you install something from the web, don't think it's secure. That software may have malware in it, and if anybody is able to upload it to their desktop, it may spread malware into your environment. Monitor your network 24/7. A lot of small agencies, when they go home at 6 o'clock, nobody is watching their network. The hackers know that, and that's when they're coming in. You have to have a reputable vendor monitoring your network. Who has access to your information and why? You have to think about that. 2-factor authentication. We talked about how strong passwords are. Does anybody do mobile banking here? You have to use that's the second factor of authentication. So that's what 2-factor authentication means. It's either a logon and a password or a password and a biometric. You have to do that with all of your devices today. Routine security assessments, what Brian did. Every organization here today should be doing this at least once a year. And I'm not saying that because it's a commercial. You really have to know where your vulnerabilities are. And then endpoint protection. You have to be monitoring all your servers, your laptops, your desktops, your smartphones. They have to be protected all the time. Now, these are some scary pictures. Just to be aware, ransomware will cost $75 billion this year. It's a lot of money. A new organization will fall victim to ransomware every 14 seconds. Next year, it's going to be every 11 seconds. I'll skip that one. It is so bad, the FBI issued a public service announcement for ransomware. First time ever. Oh, and by the way, there are 46 people on the FBI most wanted list who are cyber criminals. We used to think about bank robbers and murderers. Of the 260 listed, there are cyber criminals on there now. And we could give this presentation to anybody who wants it. These are just areas that I talked about that everybody should think about a cybersecurity roadmap in your organization. You can start at one spot and continue down the road to have better cyber hygiene in your organization. As I said, I can go on for hours, but I've only have 900 seconds. And all I wanted to do today was to thank Brian for having the wherewithal to really do this assessment and understand where his vulnerabilities were and remediate them. And then with the time I had today was just to raise your level of awareness. So I thank you for that. If you have any questions, if there's time, otherwise I'll stick around later and answer.
Looks like we've got some questions. Karen?
Well, not so much for you, sir. Thank you for the presentation. But after the assessment, what did we do? Or do we not want to say that in public?
Well,
did we have a lot of problems, or
no.
we're okay?
So one of the things was being aware of. Kevin can probably speak to this a lot better than I can, but being that it was on my watch, our server is aging, and you need to replace them. And replacing servers are very expensive. They can be $10,000, $20,000. It all depends on how many applications you have on the server, and it is going to be a little costly up front moving things to the cloud and removing the server, but the cost savings on the backup and the different things and some of the daily backups, those will decrease drastically. Being aware, bringing everybody's computers up to speed, replacing them, that's all part of the information replacement schedules that you have. So just the awareness is kind of priceless. And moving forward, it gives me just more knowledge on things to look for and being aware of different consultants that we have and utilizing things like that. So
Well, and I appreciate that. When I saw Microsoft 7, I think they're up. I know I'm on 10. And I've always been a big advocate. You've got to keep up with it, because otherwise, by the time you do invest more money, you're spending more than you needed to if you'd kept it up all along. And for passwords, I know they're important. I'm one of those bad ones that has the same password for a lot of things, and I know that's not a good thing. But I hate it when every 3 months some of my things tell me to have to change. I can't think of that many kind of passwords. And just for any of you who've had it, I've had the problem. You get a call and they say they're Apple support. Have you had this? And they sound so legitimate. They'll give you their name, their badge number, but something just hit in my head like, this wasn't right. And I called. He said, well, you can hang up and call me back. I thought, well, whoopee-doo, you give me a fake phone number. Anyway, I got another one recently, and I'm just, it's something to be aware of. I'm sure that's no big...
I place those calls.
Oh, just to check.
It's called vishing, V-I-S-H-I-N-G.
And what
it's
is
social engineering over the phone. And it's, like you said, it sounds legitimate, but there's something gnawing at you to saying, Apple wouldn't do that. It depends what they were asking for.
Well, no, they wanted access to my computer.
Of course they did.
Yeah, and I work for the county, and so at home I have my own personal computer, and I have county applications on that, and so it's really great because I can call my IT folks, and I know who they are, and give them access to my computer, and they do whatever they got to do. But those are the only people I would ever give access to anything to. But
you're up, Tom.
I know this is priceless, but what does something like this cost?
For our size organization, I don't want to speak on behalf, but you guys know what Randy's signature authority is.
This is great, Brian. What I
You're always forward-thinking, Brian, so thank you for doing this. The one thing I didn't see on there, Carl, that's absolutely essential, that needs to be on every presentation you do, absolutely never, for any organization, host your website on your own server.
Yes.
I have a 16-year-old kid that, let's just say, was in Contra Costa County, and let's pick the largest company in Contra Costa County, very large corporation, actually was hosting their website on their server in about 24 seconds was in their corporate files. Because you can get in through, Flash is one of the easiest programs that you can get through, and it's just the nature of how it's like opens a door when you do an action, when you click on something, and you can slip through that. So it's really important. Carl said that it really should be in there. Never, ever host a website. That's why a third-party hosting, first of all, your backup is not by the day. It's instantaneous. If the site gets hacked, they have a backup copy. That was literally almost to the second. And it prevents the most common way to get to corporate access. So, and I won't ask anybody who has theirs, but don't have it. Even the town of Danville, we had it some time ago, and we finally have switched because we got hacked. So anyway, but this is great. Perfect timing. Keep doing it. And if you want to know how much it costs, it's on one of our monthly bills, and you can see. But it was really well worth it.
Thank you. Just for the record, all kinds of companies get hacked. MTC had one email that wound up going to, I know of at least 3 people in this room. It looked absolutely legitimate. It looked like an invoice that I was actually expecting, and it came from somebody I didn't expect it to come from, but it came from his actual address. So it looked legitimate. But I know John Kopchik got it, and I know my finance manager got it, and I know there are probably 100 other people who got that email just because somebody got into a server at MTC. So they found it, and they got it fixed. But, and Kevin's an expert on this stuff. He does this all the time. So, yeah, just beware.
I knew you had to say something, Kevin.
No, I don't break into anything. I just think great job, good way to think ahead, way to be more proactive instead of waiting for something to happen. Let's be aggressive and make sure we can stop it before it gets here. Moving off of Windows 7 is definitely the right move. The more we can push up into more secure cloud environments, even better. I'm not sure if we still have applications that need 7 to run on that won't run on 10. I'm not sure where we are software-wise, that-wise, and what we have out there. But the most important part of all of this thing comes down to the actual user. We can set up all the firewalls. We can run all these tests. But like I said, 93% of malware shows up via email. And it depends. And Julie, you got one of those rare instances where someone was actually sending it from the user, but most of the time, when you get an email, don't look at the name on there, look at the sender. Always look at that sender and make sure that coincides with an address that looks familiar, that you're familiar with. And the safest thing is delete it. If it's really important, they'll resend it. Someone will keep resending it to you if you don't respond to it. But like I say, in all this, the real critical part is the user themselves slowing down and not opening up everything that shows up on your desk, even though it might be funny and it might look amusing. There are lots of things buried everywhere and out there in the world.
And I agree with that, and that was really one of the purposes of this meeting when Brian suggested to come here and give an awareness briefing, a shortened version like I did for his team. It's just something you may not have thought about, or the audience behind us, it's something you really have to think about almost on a daily basis. And the human is the weakest link. We all know what a firewall is, right? We've all had that term. Well, I say we're the human firewall. We have to be just as diligent as this piece of technology is protecting your network. You have to, as a human firewall, do the same.
Thank you, sir, for your time, and Ryan, good job.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. Planning Committee. As the Planning Committee did not meet in November, the following items are being referred directly to the Authority Board. Decennial Model Update Authorizations.
Thank you, Chair. Matt Kelly, Acting Director of Planning for the Authority. I'm here to present the 2 items related to the decennial model update. Decennial, for those in the audience, is just a fancy word for every 10 years. And every 10 years we do a major overhaul of our travel demand forecasting model. Thank you, Terry Ann. And you should be able to see this on the screen. So the objective here tonight is to develop a travel demand forecasting model that will provide the authority with the tools it needs to fully assess the future of Contra Costa's transportation system and all the impacts that there are to the system, including transportation projects and land use developments that your local cities may have. And it also needs to be consistent with MTC's regional model. And currently we are using what we call a 4-step trip-based model. It runs on software called Transcad. Measure J does require us to use this model in order to do traffic studies, to assess the performance of our various projects, either authority projects or local projects, local general plan amendments, and then the countywide transportation plan and action plans. And as the CMA for Contra Costa, we are required under statewide legislation, the CMP legislation, to maintain this model and be consistent with the MPO being MTC and the inputs of the RTP. Just those figures to the side are just what goes into the model. Basically, land use data, population, households, jobs, along with all the transportation infrastructure in the county, including roadways, our bus lines, our rail lines, and our major bike and pedestrian paths. So some history. Our first decennial update was in 2000. Prior to then, we had 4 sub-area models. There was an East County, West County, Central, and Southwest. We combined those into one countywide model that included the rest of the Bay Area counties. We moved it to this Transcad software that we're currently using. It was using the latest land use at the time, projections 2003. Over that decade, we updated it with 2 more sets of land use updates, and forecasts at that time went out to year 2035. The 2010 decennial update allowed us to update the model with the latest processes from MTC's model known as Baycast at the time. That model runs on Fortran, and so you can kind of see how far we're getting.
I did that in 1970.
Yeah, exactly. So that's helping me frame the subject of why we need to do something different. And we had to actually buy a piece of hardware off of eBay at the time to translate the Fortran. And that was 9 years ago. So at that time, we added detail for the newly minted priority development areas around the county. We used projections 2009 land use, which was the latest. We've updated it 3 times since. And our forecasts now go out to year 2040. So for the decennial update, we've identified some needs. We need to be able to assess the impacts of autonomous vehicles on the system. We need to be able to look at pricing on the system, now for express lanes, maybe in the future for other types of pricing. We need to assess the impacts of TNCs, the Ubers and Lyfts of the world, because we know what they're doing in San Francisco. They're having an impact out here as well, maybe not as great as San Francisco, but we really don't know. And we need to accurately do inventories of our VMT and GHGs, and we need to be, as I mentioned before, consistent with MTC's activity-based model. So they've gone from that Fortran-based Baycast model to what they called Travel Model 1, which is an activity-based model. And I don't want to get into details, but the main difference between an activity-based model and our trip-based model is that an activity-based model follows you around your journey for the day. So starting up in the top, didn't mean to do that. Starting up in the top right-hand corner is home. You follow the first yellow line, you're dropping your kid off at school. Then your next trip is down to where you park your car, and you may walk the next stretch to your office, or you may take a bus or a train that last stretch to your office. Your office is those buildings down in the lower left corner. Then you go to lunch and get that taco. You come back. You then leave for the day, and you may run an errand and get some food. You then go home, and then, you got to go back to the store. So you make that trip down to the store in the lower right and back. A tour-based model, also known as an activity-based model, captures all those trips. Here's what a trip-based model captures: work and home. It also can capture other trips from your home, like to the store and back, but it doesn't capture all those in-between trips. And because of that, our model is no longer consistent with MTCs, and we're getting further and further away. We want to get back so it's not such a struggle to stay consistent with MTC and the RTP. So in 2017, we did a model evaluation study. We looked at several criteria, including cost, speed, consistency with MTC. Does it allow us to test our policies? Is it sensitive to local transportation projects or land use projects? Can it deal with operations, the more micro scale elements of the model where you're looking, at a freeway corridor and not just the entire county? What's the ease of accessibility? Can staff use it, or do we need a consultant to run it? Level of effort to update the model, and is it portable? Can we share it with our consultants? We looked at 5 different options. One was to just update the current countywide model, work on that Fortran, get it with the latest land use, and call it a day. We could enhance the current model, take our current model and try and get it to the best we can, assess all those things I mentioned, the autonomous vehicles, the TNCs, things like that, where we can get the model to do some of it, but we think there's better ways of doing it. We could develop from scratch an activity-based model in-house. This would require, like I said, starting from scratch, and would probably be the most expensive option here. We could adopt MTC's Travel Model 2. That is their latest model that they are completing development on, and it does those things we want it to do. I'll get into that in just a bit, but it is the model that the RTP is assessed with, so it would keep us entirely consistent with MTC and the RTP. And then a kind of hybrid option where we keep our existing model for selected local studies and things like 239, where we're looking at San Joaquin County, because we've done some work with San Joaquin County on our model, but also at the same time use Travel Model 2, and so we have that consistency with MTC and the RTP. Our technical committees, as well as the board, went with option number 5. TMWG is our technical modeling working group. It's a subcommittee of our technical coordinating committee. So they went over this. They thought the best way to go is to adopt Travel Model 2, but they also wanted the option of using our trip-based model for certain smaller scale studies. So option 5 was what was chosen, and we've since been waiting for Travel Model 2 to be completed, and now we've kind of at that point, and so we're starting to move forward. So speaking of Travel Model 2, it's been under development for about the last 4 or 5 years. They are expecting to have it fully calibrated in the next few months. It expanded their zone system, which is, the model is made up of zones, and the finer grain the zones, the better analysis you're going to get, especially locally. So it went from 1,400 zones to over 5,000 zones. And they've designed it to be used by counties. That was why they added the detail. The forecasts now go out to year 2050, and it can assess impacts of autonomous vehicles, the Ubers and Lyfts, pricing of travel, whether it be express lanes or congestion pricing, and it also can assess transit crowding. And that's transit crowding is when, say, BART is too full, and instead of people cramming on, the model can't physically fit more people on a BART car, so it puts them in their private car. And that's what humans do, that's what the model does. So, early this year, planning staff began just casual discussions with our partner agency, ACTC, about updating models. We had already gone through this evaluation. They asked us about our evaluation, said they were interested in adopting Travel Model 2 as well. As you know, the counties share a majority of their borders, at least their populated borders. We've got I-80 and San Pablo Avenue in West County. We've got 24 and 680 in southwest part of the county, and then all the way out to the San Joaquin county line is in common. So a lot of our transportation system is shared, and actually a big chunk of our model, of our county model, includes the Tri-Valley portion of Alameda County. It is part of our study area because of TVTC being one of our RTPCs. And many of our projects cross county lines, so having consistency across the county line is important. Both agencies use consultants for model development. We don't have full-time modelers in-house, so we rely on consultants for that. And we figured we could get some economies of scale by partnering together on this effort and using one consultant team. We've developed a scope and schedule, and we've estimated the total cost to be about $1.2 million to be split between the two agencies at $600 per. And the figure to the right, the $1 million, is what we budgeted for our own countywide model update back in 2010. So right there, we're identifying, at least several $100,000 in savings. We will need to have an on-call consultant once we have a model in place, which costs us about $200,000 for about 5 years of work. So we think there's definitely room. Our current model over the last 10 years is now up to about 1.35 million. So we've spent a fair amount in the last 10 years on our current model. We think our next 10 years of modeling would be much less expensive if we were to partner with ACTC. So our proposed next steps are to develop a cooperative agreement with ACTC and bring that to you. CCTA has volunteered to lead the RFP process and manage the consultant team just because we were preparing to do that anyway. And that gives us a little more leverage over the entire thing. The first step, once we have a consultant on board, would be to obtain a working version of Travel Model 2 and then have the consultant team really dig into that model, start testing all the components of it, make operational and technical assessments, as we will need to invest in some hardware for that. And then the other initial major task would be to collect 2020 traffic counts so we can validate the model to our current conditions. And we would do all of these tasks next year. There is actually another line that's being cut off here, and that's basically to do the full model development once we've made it through all these tasks and assessed the condition of the model. So that is our proposed work plan for updating for preparing the decennial model update, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Comments, questions?
Thank you for that. And I think the decision is a great one to go with this hybrid version. Is actually the MTC's Model 2 ready and available?
It's not. They thought they were going to have it ready for the 2021, the current RTP that they're assessing, Plan Bay Area 2050. The Regional Modeling Working Group, which kind of oversees their work, found some issues and said,
so So when's it available?
Early next year, within the next few
Okay,
months.
so our schedule's dependent upon, we can't do much until that.
Right, which is why we've only identified the first two tasks that have to be complete before we move on.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. With that, I'd move the item.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. To approve 4B 3-1. Is there anybody, public, wishing to address us on this item? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 4B 3-2, approval to release request for proposals, RFP 19-9, to retain a qualified consultant for the 2020.
So move. You already did that.
I have a first, I have a second. Is there any discussion? We'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. 4.2, a new item, accessible transportation strategic ATS plan, appoint Contra Costa Transportation Authority Board member to the Policy Advisory Committee, PAC, and confirm committee membership and structure.
Good evening, Chair Taylor and Commissioners. Peter Engel, CCTA staff. We have this item before you tonight. This is regarding the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan. As you all recall, excuse me, during the discussion of the Transportation Expenditure Plan, this was the study that we were doing that would help guide us in the spending of the line item that was designated for accessible transportation. So as part of this study, you have previously approved that there would be oversight committees, a policy advisory committee, and a technical advisory committee. I'm happy to say the technical advisory committee met for the first time yesterday afternoon here in this room. We had a 100% attendance for that, for the 18-member committee, and there was a lot of good discussion and introduction of the study. Tonight, we are still in the process of putting together the Policy Advisory Committee. What we anticipate from the Policy Advisory Committee is probably 2 to 3 meetings total throughout the project, and the Policy Advisory Committee would just review the work of the consultant, the Technical Advisory Committee, make sure it's staying on track, and address any potential policy issues that might come up associated with that. So we do have a spot representative from CCTA to sit on that Policy Advisory Committee, and we're looking for your direction tonight to put somebody on that PAC.
Karen, your light came on first.
You know, I've given this a lot of thought and have talked with a number of the advocates, and one of the things we're looking for, and I'm looking at the current membership, there's representation from each of the 3 transit operators, actually 4 in Contra Costa County, but I'd like to nominate for the authority's consideration Teresa Geringer to serve as our representative.
Okay. I have.
Do we just get one?
No, you can have one or you can have more.
It says members hyphen.
But I only heard one from Peter, so that's why I'm asking.
I thought that too, but I'm looking at the staff report.
It says member or members.
It says 5, authority board member, parentheses S.
I can read, but that's not what I heard out of his mouth. That's
No,
what I'm asking.
I see what you're saying, I'm sorry.
We leave that, there is room for 2 if you choose to go that way, but we leave that decision up to you.
Okay. All right.
I was going to say, I would be interested in serving in that capacity.
Okay.
And I've had it highly suggested to me that I get on this.
So we have 3 persons. Well, we can only have 2. Correct?
No, you can have.
You can have 3?
I will leave that up to you. We've got, I mean, this is your study from the authority. The authority and the county are doing this together. The Policy Advisory Committee, like, you know, I told you what we're looking for them to do. We want to keep it at a manageable number, but if you want to have 3 people from the authority, you know, we'll accommodate that.
All right. It's board's choice. So what is the board's?
Because it counts one here.
Does anybody want to make a motion to have 2, or make a motion to have 3, or make a motion of some type?
What's your comments, No?
No?
I'm trying to hear what your comments were.
I'm sorry.
You're counting.
Currently have 10 that are on the list, so it seems that, we can put, if we've got 3 people, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, it's 13, it's an odd number, that way you can make decisions.
Right, and I was going to make a recommendation that if all interested, Teresa, I didn't hear from you. If you're interested, then I would recommend that the 3 interested committee meeting members would be appointed.
That's a first? That's a second? We do have a first and a second. Any discussion? We'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So unanimous. Well, congratulations to all 3 of you, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Correspondence and communications, Associated Community reports, commissioners, staff comments.
Commissioner?
Yes.
I was going to say that I just attended Focus on the Future, and as usual, I found it a really valuable experience. And one of the ways in which I found it very valuable was the tour that one can go on, because it gives people an opportunity to look at things in a new and different way, in a new and different environment. And so I went on I think it was called the Midtown Trolley Tour. Well, there was no trolley, but that was okay, because what I found on that tour was quite valuable. And that was, it was actually the area that includes UC San Diego. And I happen to know from when my youngest daughter was younger and looking for colleges that we went there. And because she had been accepted, and we were considering having her go there. And she found it so incredibly difficult to get there that she dropped it off her list. But now they're building a trolley line that will go there. The thing that I found particularly invaluable about it was listening to people from different agencies who were working on the project talk about how they were cooperating, and how if a person from, say, Agency 1 had expertise in subject matter A, then that person would be the one doing that kind of work. And if Agency 2 had a person B that was expert in another area, even though it might not have been the obvious way things would have worked, that was what they were doing. And they appeared to be, from what they were saying, getting the work done at an incredibly quick speed. And it was a pretty complicated project in that it involved intersections with the trolley lines and highway highway lines, and mapping that all out. And they were going to, this coming weekend, I believe it is, shut down a particular freeway in one of the directions altogether. But they had it all figured out, and it sounded like, because of the level of cooperation, that it had a very good chance of having a great deal of success. So I think that was the thing I learned more than anything at this particular conference, was about the value of cooperation.
Thank you. Karen?
Oh, going to play. Yeah, we also, I guess several of us attended. I was more impressed with Randy's speech. I thought he did a great job. But the one that caught the most attention is when they brought all the CEOs up there, and I thought we were going to be there till Thursday. And Randy managed to do it in the least amount of time and drew a lot of compliments for it. It's amazing when you talk about this, how the conversation eventually comes back to Mosto. I think both you and San Diego did very good speeches, and eventually it's going to come down to, you're not going to be able to widen the roads. You're not going to just do it with transit. Somehow, some way, communicating the different options is going to be very big in the equations. And they used a lot of numbers of why certain things were more important than others, which I always find intriguing for about 12 seconds, and then I go back to remembering the pictures. I think this is a very valuable conference, and I like it that it's not far away, or you're not flying for half the day or more. And I wish we had more people attending it. I'm not sure where it's going to be next year, but I'd strongly recommend trying to put it on your agenda, because the networking alone is worth the price of admission.
Thank you. Recently, members of MTC and ABAG received a copy of a letter addressed to Mr. Jim Wonderman, Mr. Carl Guardino, and Alicia Jean-Baptiste relative to Faster Bay Area. I sent it to Randy, and he was going to have staff look into it and how we should discuss this. Subsequent to that time, Supervisor Candace Anderson and I sit on our Transportation, Water, and Infrastructure Committee, and we directed our staff to talk with staff here. And I'm just wondering, I have a copy of the letter here. I realize that not a lot of you do, and it's not agendized, but I see Alameda Transportation Authority weighed in on some concerns they had, and I just thought at some point this authority needs to have a conversation if we even want to send a letter, and if we do, what we might want to share. But I think it's important that we have a conversation. So I'd look to staff to either have this agendized for our what do we call it, our December meeting.
Following your deal, I did talk previous to Tim Hale, and I've got him looking into.
Well, and I've gotten some feedback that it's sort of, I want to make sure it's coming here, and I'm not getting the impression that it's going to. So if you can assure me, Bob, that it's coming on the agenda in the near future.
Yeah, Lindsay's going to work on that.
Yeah.
We're going to put it on the next APC and then ultimately to the full board to have
Thank
a
you.
conversation on
Yeah,
FAST.
that,
We've weighed
I
in.
done that this afternoon.
Commissioners, we're on a every other week phone call with Bay Area Council on the progress. So we have some PowerPoint presentations that the latest one we can present here if that's the format you want, and kind of lay out the latest and what's happening, and then maybe some of our concerns. We've had a number of discussions about, typically we don't get our fair share no matter how hard we ask and how early we ask. And we could ask tomorrow for something that's going to happen in 10 years. We want our fair share, and it just doesn't seem like it's early enough. And so we're trying to figure out a strategy. The issue is our infrastructure. If we're going to move people off the highway, we need to start now. And we don't have enough money to do that. And it's going to take a big investment in order to do that, VMT reduction, put people on bicycles, other modes of transportation. And so the thought process is good. It's the devil's in the details. And so we have to make sure there's regulatory framework that allows us to deliver these projects very quickly. The trolley that Commissioner Abelson was talking about, that project has been in the planning process for like 30 years. They've always wanted to run a trolley out to UC Santa Cruz, San Diego, and maybe even to Santa Cruz. But they were talking about that when I was in project management back in 1990. We were programming STIP dollars to try to figure out how to get the kids or people circulating through UC San Diego. So yes, it looks great at the end. We've also replaced bridges and closed freeways here to make sure that the BART extension can happen on time and those kinds of things. But we are going to work on faster.
No, and I appreciate that, and we have great expertise in staff. I just think it's better to come to this board for some direction, perhaps, to staff on what our various priorities are, so that we can have that conversation and it's transparent to our public. And so, thank you. If it's coming next month, that's great. Thank you.
My question to you, Director, I was not under the impression, is it going to come next month or later?
Yes, we're going to work on trying to get it to next month. So the
There you
sooner, the better, and then we can continue the discussion beyond December. So
Okay,
Lindsay
I
and
just wanna
Kim
make
will
it
work
clear.
together. Tim's nodding his head. See, yes. He's saying
Okay,
yes.
there you go, Karen.
Thank you. I think we need to be brought up to speed with what staff's working on, what their thoughts are. I'm hearing from a number of constituents. We're seeing a number of articles in our newspaper. I just think we need to be briefed on this so that we are ahead of the curve. Thank you.
Tom.
As you have already heard, the Richmond-Sanderfeld Bridge multi-use bike and ped trail opened last weekend, and the official count for both Saturday and Sunday of pedestrians and bicycle riders was 5,000. 3,600 on Saturday and 1,400 on Sunday. And CCTA played a major role in getting this done all the way through. And so Randy and the rest of the staff who worked on that, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it. We had this, Amy and I had this setup going where we were going to ride the first bikes across the bridge, right? And so the ceremony started at 10 o'clock in the morning. By that time, there were already a couple of thousand people ready to roll. And then the speeches started, and the speeches went on and on and on and on. By the time the speeches were over, there was nobody left there. They'd all gone across the bridge. So instead of being first, Amy and I were last. And the other thing of note, again, we got a lot of help from CCTA getting this done, but Richmond got some grants from MTC and maybe BATA too, to put in a lot of infrastructure on the east side of the bridge to tie the bridge route into our new ferry terminal and the Bay Trail and BART and the Richmond Greenway and all. And so people who came from the Richmond side, were as excited about that as they were about the bridge. But I tell you what, the Marin people have got a long way to go. You ride over that bridge, it's like a dead end. There's nothing there. You're stuck. So anyway, it was a great day. And for those of you who haven't done it, come ride with us.
Comments on this, Julie?
Yes, I just wanted to echo previous folks who say thank you for helping us go to the Focus on the Future conference. I think a lot of us know what it is, but for those who don't, it is a conference put on for and by all of the self-help counties in California. So others who have a self-help sales tax for transportation are all there sharing their best practices, their new innovations, and what they are able to accomplish. And I was especially proud of both Randy and Lindsay for their presentations. Lindsay led a Women as Disruptors in Transportation and what they're doing differently and how they're making an impact. And it was very poorly attended because it was right after lunch, right at the time that everybody had to check out. But it was a spectacular session, and I don't see Lindsay, but at least she will hear that I thought it was great, and it was really wonderful, and all of those from the consultant group and others who were very generous hosts to us, thank you very, very much. There were a lot of incredible conversations. The networking opportunities there are absolutely amazing, and to learn from the consultant community offline as well as in the formal presentations was really stimulating. So it was sort of like drinking information from a fire hose.
I back that. I was there also. I repeat what she said. Executive Director.
So, Commissioners, one of the things that I was asked to do, and the reason why I couldn't moderate that panel was because I was asked to do the first speech at the Self-Help Counties Focus on the Future conference, which I had never done before. And so we put a PowerPoint presentation together because it's the 30-year anniversary of the formation of the coalition. And in that PowerPoint presentation, we put factoids in about, what you could buy in 1989, but also how much money is generated by the self-help counties. And there's a lot of commissioners on the California Transportation Commission that I don't think really understand the whole idea of, in the old days, with the blueprint for the 21st century in 1989, that was Bob Best was the director of Caltrans and Duke Mason was the governor. They doubled the gas tax. But they also created a state and local partnership program to thank the counties, or reward the counties, maybe thanks, not the right word, but reward, with some extra dollars to leverage for projects. So 95% came to the self-help counties by formula, 5% was competitive. Proposition 1B, when we worked with Secretary and Sonny Wright McPeak and convinced the governor we needed to put a bond initiative on the ballot to focus about a little under $110 billion at fighting congestion, which it didn't resolve congestion because we didn't have P3s and those public-private partnerships and things like that. Once again, there was a state and local partnership program, 95% formula-based, 5% competitive. And so people are changing places so quickly now that they've forgotten the history. I think it's important every now and again in the future is to go back in time and remind yourselves of why we were created, what we were supposed to do, and are we doing the right things? Because I think it's good. And we talked about that at it was like, Tim, was it 2.5 hours? It was about 2.5 hour meeting in the afternoon after the first day. Everybody's tired, but we brought in the CTC commissioner. He goes, I can't pronounce his last name, but they call him BVK, Paul Van something or other. And he was really thankful and wanted to partner with the self-help counties because we produce and invest so much in the state highway system. On a negative note, one of the discussion was because in one of the districts they're not partnering very well and they're changing the commitments that the self-help counties made to their voters. They're thinking about not investing any more money on the state highway system. And I think that's probably not the right move. I think there's things that can be done internally on the Caltrans side. The good news is that we know the director of Caltrans now, Tokes, is a gentleman from Tennessee, and we've had him here in our office a couple of times and out to Gomentum Station. So I think that's a great idea and a great advantage for us. And so we attended the Focus on the Future, so that was great. We've been doing a lot of speeches, a lot of meetings. I want to report out that Dave Hudson and Mayor Taylor and I went to the ITS World Congress in Singapore. So they attended, and we went. I gave a couple of speeches there. People are interested in what this county is doing as far as trying to move people. We had a meeting with Neuron. We're still trying to bring a motorized scooter that loves regulations, that doesn't want to just park these things everywhere. They want restrictions. They want to know how the cities want to configure the path for these vehicles. So we had a number of conversations with a lot of startup companies. We're looking at one of the companies developed an app for a beacon that says, hey, I'm a bicycle rider, hey, I'm a bicycle rider, or hey, I'm a pedestrian, watch out for me. Because what's happening is you're going to adopt a Vision Zero policy when the measure's passed. And so we're going to have to do things a little bit differently to try to find ways of reducing the fatality rate in our county. And so we're looking, so we gathered a lot of good information in Singapore. There's been 2 retirements. Art Dow is going to retire. Tess Langell has been appointed as the new executive director. Diane Steinhauser has retired, and Ann Richmond from MTC has taken her place. So the men running the various self-help counties in the Bay Area, we're becoming a limited quantity. I just noticed that there's only 2 of us left. So thank you for keeping me here. I appreciate that. and then two great, me and Daryl we're it. So Matt Kelly is acting director of planning, and then Stephanie Hu is going to be the acting director of projects when Susan retires. Thank you for accepting that extra responsibility. If no questions, I'm finished.
Randy, you need to report that how much we were mentioned by the new Secretary of Transportation, CCU and CCTA.
Well, we go to Washington, D.C. every year, and Secretary David Kim is now the Secretary for California's Secretary of Transportation, State Transportation Agency. And so we've had the pleasure of meeting with him when he was at Federal Highway Administration and he worked at USDOT. And so we've made a lot of presentations, a lot of requests for regulation reform, a lot of requests for money. And so he tends to I guess he likes us. And so he mentioned us quite a few times in his speech.
Yeah, in his opening speech, he mentioned us quite a few times. And he did mention director by first name. That's always good.
Mm-hmm.
Hudson.
Yeah, I forgot we were supposed to report out about that. Very impressed with some of the new innovation particularly the one we kept coming back to that Panasonic has about the radar, and you could see through the smoke, and would like to see more of that. ITS is in Los Angeles next October. really impressed with a lot of the speeches, but one thing I wasn't impressed with, and you just can't get through this with this new technology. It's the same old answers we've been hearing for 3 years. Well, what happens when it crashes? Well, I still remember we were in DOT and somebody says, I'll get behind this innovation the minute one of these CEOs from Apple or whatever gets in the back seat of an autonomous vehicle up Highway 1. Without batting an eye, Randy said, I'll do it right now. And you just can't get through these people. They don't get it. There's going to be hiccups. But you've got to keep moving ahead because you get over there and they're ahead of us on a few things, 5G for one. But hopefully we keep pushing ahead and more of these obstacles will just fade away.
No, calendar is November, December, January.
Commissioner, Chair, I have a couple more things real quick.
Yes, sir.
One is you went to Las Vegas to attend the drone conference.
Yes, I did.
So you need, so that was one. There's your report.
That was my report.
And then what Commissioner Hudson is talking about is at the ITES World Congress, Panasonic has developed a 3D radar system. And so when the measure passes again, in the bores 1, 2, and 3, this technology sees through smoke. So right now, cameras cannot see through smoke. And so if there's a problem and you can't guide your people out, you have a problem. So the technology is getting better to allow for operators to see through smoke, rain, fog, and make sure that the people that need help can be talked to and moved out of that tunnel. So we're really impressed with that technology. And then thank you to the Board of Supervisors for voting 5-0 to put this on the measure on the ballot in March of 2020. So that is fantastic news. So Tim, you want to come up and talk about the next steps on for the measure? Just to remind everybody, I know it's getting late, but maybe just remind people about what are the next steps for us.
By the way, Randy announced that at Focus in his introductory remarks that you guys had just voted 5-0. That got a round of applause from the whole state.
Well, we're the smallest staff probably per dollar of any of our other 8 competitors. We contract everything out, including our IT support and our IT readiness and our all that. So we contract everything out. So everybody in the room knows when we're going to pass another measure, that work is going to be contracted out.
So thank you, Randy, and also thank you to the Board of Supervisors for approving the measure on Tuesday. And so next steps is all the ordinance have been executed. We received those from the county clerk, and so now we're moving forward and pushing everything over to the elections office and the county registrar's office. And so we're working with them on translating the entire expenditure plan, developing the black and white expenditure plan. And so we've been anticipating this. So Lindsay and Convey have been working really hard on developing a really nice version, black and white version of the color TEP. And it looks really, really nice. And based on the conversation we had, we're putting the entire expenditure plan in the voter information guide, as well as the ballot language that was approved by the authority board on October 30th. And we're working all that with the county's elections office. And meanwhile, we are getting a few requests to start speaking. And so we'll be doing that in the next coming months as well. And those will be information sharing in terms of facts and figures in the expenditure plan.
Thank you, sir. And then I wanted to model for purposes, I went to the drone conference, not with CCTA. I went for my city. So just thought
I appreciate that. It was listed here in the report. So.
Right, but it wasn't on CCTA.
Thank you.
All right. November through calendar of upcoming events are all attached. I figured we'd get done by Thanksgiving. We did accomplish that. So everyone be safe. Have a nice time with your family. And let's adjourn to the regular meeting, December 18th, 2019, 6 p.m. Adjourned.